Oh my God, it's Oathbound time. It's Oathbound time. I like don't know what to do with myself. Like it's sitting in my hands. I'm holding it. I could open it right now and immediately start reading. And like I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do with that information. It's been so long. I'm so stressed. Look how chunky she is. It's like it's here. It's here. I have it. It's right here. I don't know what to do with this information. I don't know what to do. Okay, so yes, it is the day that I'm going to start Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. I thought I would try this little reading vlog thing again. We'll see how this goes. I feel like I can't adequately express how excited and how stressed and how scared I am for this. I finished my reread of Bloodmarked yesterday, so I am fully caught up. My memory has been jogged. I know what's going on. Let me put on my little thing here. This is so I don't mess up the book with my grubby little hands. There you go. And then it's nice and protected. People always ask me where these are from. I got this from an Illumicrate box. If you search up like fabric book covers, you can find these. I can never find this particular kind. It's like a faux leather padded kind. If anybody knows where to find that kind, please let me know because I would love to find more of these and not just have to wait for them to come in an Illumicrate box at some point. I'm obsessed with this. But yes, I finished my Bloodmarked reread yesterday. I'm all set and ready to go. I'm going to assume if you're watching this video that you have read Bloodmarked, and so there will be like up through Bloodmarked spoilers. I'm going to leave this spoiler-free for Oathbound, at least until potentially the end of this video. I may include like a review where I talk about spoiler stuff at the very end, but if I do, that will be well marked with a huge warning that like, hey, stop watching here. But yeah, this is going to be spoiler-free for Oathbound other than like general reactions and things. And I guess it's just time. I feel like I do this all the time where like when I'm really, really excited to read a book, I feel like I'm putting it off. Like I feel like I'm not starting. Like I'm too excited. What do I do with that? What do I do with that energy? I guess what I do is I just open the damn book. Like, are we going to pick up within like seconds of where Bloodmarked leaves off? Because Bloodmarked leaves off on that like big cliffhanger. Like, are we gonna pick up right there, or is there gonna be like a little time jump? Who are we starting with? Are we gonna have? Is it just gonna be single POV? What if it's dual POV? No, I think it's just single POV. Actually, what I should have done is well, not should have done. I guess I'm gonna find out any second now. I could have looked at like the audiobook and seen who the narrators are. Because if there's just the single narrator that we've had the whole time, then it's just Bree POV. But what if it's dual narrator and then you find out there's dual POV? And again, the book is in front of me. I could find this out right now by simply opening the book and reading it instead of speculating. Okay. 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 Cool. Cool, 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 cool. Yep. Oh, and which I did not realize until I brought it home, it's signed. I had no idea when I picked this up at the bookstore. Book 3 in the Legendborn cycle. All right, first chapter down. I'm officially reading it. I'm in it. I'm stressed. I keep getting so many notifications. So today is also the day that the cover dropped for To Bargain with Mortals, the book that I'm publishing that comes out in October. So our cover reveal was this morning, which is why I'm starting this in like the middle of the day. So my notifications are going crazy. There's a lot happening today, and I'm gonna have to take breaks later on to get it posted on other platforms. So all of that is happening at the same time that I'm like trying to get into this. There's a lot happening. I will check back in a little bit. How many pages is this? We're looking at about 630, just over 630 pages. It would be really particularly nice if I could get through like 300 pages of this today. I don't know if my previous reading vlog will have ever been posted to YouTube by the time this goes up. I never quite decided if I was going to post that publicly because it didn't really go anywhere. It was really depressing. But I'm going to try, if you have seen that and have seen how much I struggled to read that day, I'm going to try to not do that again and have an actual successful reading time and reading vlog. So it would be really nice if I could get through like 300 pages. If I get to the halfway mark, about 315 today, that would be great. And usually that would not be like an if I could do this kind of thing because it's like 12:30 right now. So like, of course I can get through 300 plus pages today. But the reading slump, the seasonal depression, it has all been the everything. It has all been kind of like snowballing into like, I can't focus for long periods of time. But I'm so invested in this. I'm really hoping that I can just like plow through this. Okay, so a good indication of how stressed I am about this book is that, so I started the book, I started the prologue, and the chapter titles or the chapter numbers are in Roman numerals. and they've always been numbers. They've always been straight up numbers with the little Legendborn symbol around them. But in this one, I was seeing that they were Roman numerals. And so I started overthinking, like, what could this mean in the narrative that we're now getting Roman numerals and we've taken away the Legendborn symbol and now we're getting these numbers instead. So I went down that rabbit hole, and then it's literally just that it's a prolonged prologue. They're Roman numerals because they're not chapters of the initial book. Because now I'm 59 pages in, and we've got part 1, and now we're back to regular numbers. Fully me just overthinking and catastrophizing things based on the chapter heading that I was looking at. Anyway, now I guess I'm on the actual chapter 1. Oh, hi. Oh, and my dryer just went off, so the blanket that I actually wanted to use is I can go get it. Still smells like a dog. Millie. Like, it smells like laundry detergent and dog. Okay, we might wash this again. Whatever, it's warm right now. All right, actual part 1, chapter 1. Okay. All right, first 100 pages down. I'm excited. I'm interested in what we're doing with the narrative here and the way that it's structured. So again, assuming that you have read Bloodmarked, if you're seeing this, and again, no spoilers for Oathbound, given how Bloodmarked leaves off, I understand and I'm very interested in how we're doing the narrative in this book and how it's going to play out. I am excited. That's all I have for the first 100 pages is I'm excited. I'm stressed for everybody involved. And I think at this point, I'm pretty much through that time in like the next installment in a series where you're getting a bunch of like, it's kind of reiterating things that you already know in order to remind you of what happened in the previous book. And so because I just read Bloodmarked, I'm like, I know, let's go. So I think I'm past that now. I feel like I'm finally into where we're like full speed ahead. Let's go. For anybody who has read Oathbound or has it in front of them, I'm about to start chapter 5, post-prologue. So that's the heading there is what I just saw. So I'm excited. Okay, I'm gonna eat some lunch. And I just realized that I did that again without plugging in the mic. So that's 2 of these updates in a row that are gonna sound not great. My apologies. I will do my best to remember to plug in the damn mic next time. I'm very excited. All right, 200-page check-in. I'm just about a third of the way through. I fear that we have done the thing in the narrative where you move from one book to the next, where you've taken 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and we have not yet taken those 2 steps forward yet. I feel like I want things to be progressing faster than they are, and I feel like that's the only non-spoiler update that I have at this point. Is in general, I wish the pacing of this were moving a little bit differently, or like the narrative progression were progressing a little bit faster, perhaps. I don't know. I know that originally, I believe this was supposed to be a trilogy, and it is no longer a trilogy. There is at least a 4th book, if not more after that, because it stopped being called the Legendborn trilogy and is now called the Legendborn cycle. So I'm curious where we're going to end up here, where there was a need for more books. Because like, given the speed with which the story is progressing, I can understand how we're going to get through this and like not be through the entire narrative of the Legendborn cycle, right? It's also clearly much later. It took me a lot longer to get here than it did through the first 100 pages. I had to do the cover reveal on TikTok and get that all set up and do some more stuff in Discord. Had to feed my dogs, had to feed myself, had to do some laundry. Actually, I mean, the laundry is going on in the midst of all this, but I have done 3 loads of laundry, which is great, except that they're all sitting just off camera right here, unfolded. I'm just gonna... I'm not dealing with that right now. Oh, you didn't get your after dinner mood. I think I tried to say medicine and food at the same time. You didn't get your after dinner medicine. Okay, hang on. She needs her medicine. Don't look at me. I don't have anything. No. There's nothing in my hand. It's okay. Why do you freak out? We do this every day. Why are we freaking out tonight? So much more than usual. There we go. Good girl. Okay, yeah, so that's my general 1/3 of the way through, is that I do just wish the narrative were progressing faster. I think we're doing interesting things in how we're doing the storytelling as opposed to the first 2 books. I just wish things were moving a little bit faster than they are. So I've got 2/3 of the way to go. I'll check in at 300, which will hopefully still be today. All right, now we're doing something. Now we're going. Okay, well, it was gonna be one more chapter, but okay. Okay. All right, halfway point check-in. I'm at 325. So I'm just over halfway through, and things are finally happening. All right, okay. I know what's going to happen next, and which is why I'm going to stop here. It's about midnight, and I know what's going to happen next. So if I start that now, I will be awake all night. I mean, maybe I will. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So things are finally happening. I am hopeful that this is going to be the kind of book where I get through it. I'm like, you just kind of have to push through the first half, and then it like really cranks up in the second half. I'm really glad that I was going to stop a couple chapters ago, and I'm really glad I kept going a couple more, because like now I'm much more excited about it. I was kind of in that mode where like this is fine, but like nothing's happening. And that's kind of been where it's at for like 200 pages, I feel like, where like I mentioned before in my last check-in that we did that whole like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and we still haven't gotten back those 2 steps. So it just kind of felt like things were stagnating. The emotional plot lines were all highly stagnated. The like actual, like there wasn't a lot of movement happening. I feel like I was kind of going chapter by chapter by chapter, and I was like getting to the end of that chapter and be like, okay, but like, where have we gone from here? Like what's the actual movement that's happened? And now we're cooking. So I'm very excited to pick this back up tomorrow. So I'm just over halfway. I'll read the other half tomorrow. I'm very excited. I'm ending at a point right now at the night where like I'm really, really excited to pick it up tomorrow. And I think if I had stopped even just a few chapters ago, I would not have been like this super fucking pumped to pick it up tomorrow. So I'm glad for that. I am hopeful that like we're really just gonna blast it out through here, and like the rest of this is just gonna be exactly what I'm hoping it will be. And just a lot more movement. Just like more movement is what I'm hoping for, I guess. Like more things happening, because like if the plot progression isn't moving a ton, but the character development is going really, really well, I'm totally cool with that. If like our emotional storytelling is going really well, even if there's not a ton of movement in the actual plot, I'm totally cool with that. But a lot of this has just felt like very stagnant. And I don't know, I think I'm going to come out of this book. I mean, this is the longest by far. It's about 630 pages. It's very long for a YA, and it's the longest in the series by far so far. And I feel like I'm going to come to the end of this book being like, it didn't necessarily need to be that long. What I kind of finally settled on is I feel like this is giving the middle book syndrome. So like, Bloodmarked was like a little bit of a lull of false insecurity, lulled you into a false sense of security, because it didn't have second book syndrome to me. It didn't have that second book syndrome. It didn't have that middle book syndrome. And given that this is now a cycle, so it's at least 4 books, this one I think is kind of the one that's going to give a little bit of that middle book syndrome of where like I got to a point where I was like, are we just reading this to like get to the next book? But no, now halfway through, now we're cooking. I'm really, really excited to pick this up tomorrow because I know what's coming next. And yes, anyway, there's that. I'll check back in tomorrow. I'm excited. Puppies, are you ready for bed? They're both passed out, so they're ready. All right, it's the next day. I'm ready to pick back up. I was correct in where I started being like a place where I was really, really hyped to pick back up. So I'm picking back up at chapter 30. For you guys, my last check-in was 5 seconds ago, so I don't have to update you on anything. I can just start going. Where are my glasses? Where did I put my glasses? All right. Right. Okay. Chill the fuck out. Let's go. One of the things that I thought was maybe just me being picky, but I think actually is something that's happening, is that we're explaining a lot of stuff multiple times. Like on this page, we've just explained warlocks again. I think it's maybe the 2nd or 3rd time we've explained warlocks in this book alone, and they were already explained in the previous books. We don't need to keep explaining what a thing is. Like there's a level of like hand holding that I feel like I'm feeling in this book that we don't really, like we're 3 books in, we don't need that, we're good. We don't need to explain warlocks for the third time in this book. No, not in a way that feels like it wants to be a standalone, just in a way that it's like kind of treating the reader like you're dumb. Like, I don't need you to explain this to me again. Like, we've got it, let's move on. There's a little bit of like, given what I mentioned previously about how like, I think this book is just going to end up feeling too long. That's kind of one of the things that's going to make it feel too long, is this incessant need to be explaining things that we already know multiple times. I'm like, I don't need that. We can just move on. And I feel like by the end of this book, we'll get to page, 630 and be like, we didn't really need 630 pages for all that. This seems odd. I mean, I guess we'll see how this plays out, but it seems odd that, like, why did, I don't know. This just seems weirdly convenient, and like, I don't know that I understand what's happening. I mean, I understand what's happening, but hang on. All right, 400 page check-in. I feel like I'm feeling very frustrated with this book, and it's such a bummer because I was so excited for this, and it's just frustrating. I know I've said this like 3 times, but it really is like we took that 2 steps back and we still have not taken those 2 steps back forward up to where we were. I just feel like there's a lot of stagnation. There's a lot of like nothing happening. And even now where I'm at, like something is happening, like things are moving, but it's like they're moving in a very frustrating way that like isn't I don't know. And like I'm trying to balance the idea of whether like truly nothing is happening or like not a lot is happening, or if it's just the idea that like I obviously am very into this series. Is it just that the things that I wanted to happen are not happening? And I think maybe it's probably a little bit of both. But yeah, like it's very stagnant. I'll have a lot more to say in the spoiler section of this video that I will do at the end. But for now, we're still in non-spoiler. So yeah, I kind of just feel like not a lot is happening. What is happening isn't like, I don't know, it's just frustrating. I'm having a frustrating experience with this book. I don't think I dislike it. I think it's just, I don't know. Like, I don't want to say this out loud. It's going to make me sad. I'm worried that this book is going to be like 3.5 stars, which is going to be very upsetting. I don't know, because that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. And like, I still have like 220 pages left to go. So hopefully things pick up. But yeah, Legendborn, 5 stars. Bloodmarked, 5 stars. So I am having a bit of a frustrating experience with this one. This is not the direction I saw this reading vlog going, by the way. I was like, anyway, you saw how excited I was in the beginning. Okay, back to it. 500 page check-in. We are exactly 500 pages because that is where the chapter ended. And my check-in is the same as it has been the last time. Like, I still feel like this is just drawn out and like not a lot is happening. And we finally had a little bit happening, but in ways that don't make a ton of sense. And like, I don't know. There's just things that are happening in this that, again, I will get into in the spoiler section of this video. But like, the actual events that are happening feel very contrived and very drawn out. And I'm wondering why we needed this book at this point. I am having to come to terms with the fact that I think I'm going to come out of this book disappointed in it, which, I mean, is difficult, right? Like, Legendborn, 5 stars. Bloodmarked, 5 stars. If you know anything about my ratings or my reviews, I'm very, very stingy with my 5-star reviews. So, like, that's kind of like a big thing for me. I read 101 books last year. I rated 5 of them 5 stars. And the previous year, I think it was the same. I think I read 108 books in 2023, rated 5 of them 5 stars. So like, I'm very stingy with my 5 stars. So the fact that Legendborn was a 5 and then Bloodmarked was a 5, I was not like, I didn't need the next book to also be a 5. That's like out of the norm for me. But like, I don't know, this is just, it's feeling contrived. It's feeling very drawn out. I'm not really sure what I'm waiting for at this point. This is definitely, I think, the middle book syndrome of this series. Like, you're just kind of reading this book to get to the next one, maybe? I don't know. I'm also reading this with a friend of mine and he's listening to the audiobook while I'm reading the physical. And same thing, where like, he just feels like it's very stretched out. At the point where I'm at in this book at page 500, the setting, the physical setting that everything is happening in, that we are in right now, we have been in the same place for 200 pages nearly, for like 180 some odd pages at this point. For like the last 200 pages, we've been in the same place, and like almost nothing is changing. We're finally getting a little bit of like character movement and like emotional movement, but like, I just feel like through so much of this book, nothing's happening. And I'm bummed about it. So I'm at 500 pages, which means I've got about 130 pages left to go, or 100, and we'll say 150, actually I think that said 642 where I saw that. So let's say I have 142 pages left to go. There's some stuff that I still want to see happen, but like at this point, I don't know. I don't know what I'm waiting for. I don't know what's coming next. I don't know where this book is going to end and leave off. I just feel like it's too long. It's too long. There's not enough happening. And to repeat myself for the umpteenth time, we took those 2 steps back. We are just now, I feel like finally maybe starting to take like a step and a half forward. We haven't gotten those 2 steps back to where we went back first. That makes sense in my head, but I don't know if it does here. I'm just rambling at this point. But yeah, the narrative, as I mentioned, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and then we're taking so long to get those 2 steps that we already lost at the beginning of the book back to get us back to where we already were. And maybe we're at like 1.5 steps now, but yeah. Anyway, I will check in again at page 600, which will be the last check-in before finishing the book, and so I'll be right back with that. Oh, and one thing that I keep thinking about but forgetting to mention is that we have fully lost the plot in this book on their ages. Legendborn does really well with acknowledging the fact that Bree is 16. Bloodmarked stretches it a little bit, but like still very much acknowledges that these things are happening to teenagers. And like the fact that she looks so young is, you know, brought up a number of times. In this one, I just feel like we have completely left that behind. That like Bree is freshly 17. And it's, as we know from like one mention in this book and the other books, like she looks like a really young 17. And teenagers not viewing themselves as children, not viewing themselves as teenagers necessarily, I'm totally on board with in YA. It's the everybody around them. It's all the adults that like nobody is seemingly acknowledging that these are teenagers. These are children. Anyway, that keeps coming up in my mind, especially in this particular setting that we've been in for like 200 pages where I'm like, is nobody acknowledging the fact that these are teenagers? Ow! Fucking static shock by my dog. All right, 600-page check-in. I've got just about 40 pages left. My guess is that this is all set up for book 4. Like we're kind of in that mode now. We're setting up for book 4. I have a feeling I know what's going to happen. I have a feeling I know a thing that is going to happen at the end of this book, which is a thing that I have predicted happening since reading Bloodmarked, and we'll see if I'm right. But yeah, this is, I think, is all going to be set up for book 4, in which case I will kind of end up with this book kind of where all of my updates have been at this point, where I'm like, this is middle book syndrome. It was too long. Like honestly, this being the longest book like installment in the series so far, being over 600 pages, is pretty crazy, because I don't think that this many pages has been earned. But I am very curious to see where we are going to leave off here. That's pretty much where I'm at. I am very curious to see what's about to happen in these pages. So let's find out.
We're in the end game now.
Oh. What? No. Okay, what's the play here? What's the play here? What the fuck? What the fuck? I don't really fucking think so. Huh? Ah! No. Okay. 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 Huh. Is there nothing? Okay. All right. Huh.
Hello?
So that happened.
Yeah, that's a totally thing that happened. I thought...
All right, it's been about an hour since I closed the last page on Oathbound. These are my non-spoiler thoughts. This is going to be entirely non-spoiler here. I will let you know when I move into spoilers. So non-spoiler, yeah, it's been about an hour since I finished this. I then spent a good 45 minutes on the phone with my friend, and he and I debriefed on what we just read. And no one is more surprised or devastated than I am to report that this was kind of a mess. And by kind of a mess, I think it's really a mess. There's this desire in me to be like really nice and like really upbeat about it because I adore this series. I think you saw in the beginning how excited I was to start. Legendborn 5 stars, Bloodmarked 5 stars. Like my intent for this reading vlog was like how excited I was going to be and how amazing this was going to be. And then it just wasn't. I think this book was kind of a mess. Like narratively, this was a mess. I think it's a lot of the stuff that I said through every check-in. It was that like right in the beginning, you kind of have that 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and then you spend the entire book trying to regain those 2 steps. And at a certain point, you kind of do. And it's not that like everything has to have a linear flow. Like you can go off the path and you can find new paths, but just like everything in this for a lot of the time felt really stagnant. It felt like we weren't moving. The plot wasn't moving forward. The character growth wasn't moving forward. The emotional storytelling wasn't moving forward. It was like very stagnated. There are parts of this book where like I was kind of just like, why are we still here? Like, why are we still in this place at this time? Nothing's happening. This is the first in the series to be multi-POV, and I don't know that I think that was, I understand, I feel like it was necessary. I don't know that I think it was done very well. Like, there's at least one POV that felt almost entirely unnecessary other than just like, hey, here's where this person is. But like that POV doesn't really add anything to what's actually going on. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in here that just like, it's kind of one of those things that like when you think about it, you stop to think about something, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Why is this happening? And it never gets addressed. And a lot of it is kind of stuff that I might be like, okay, well maybe I'm just, but my friend and I, my friend Aaron was reading this book with me, and I would ask him a question. He'd be like, okay, I thought the same thing. What was that about? And then like later, we'd be talking and he'd be like, okay, well, what about this? And I'm like, I thought the same thing. So we had the same questions, the same things that weren't adding up for the both of us. And I just, ooh. I'm really disappointed, I think. It's hard to go into something with this high of expectations, right? Like 5 stars across the board for Legendborn and Bloodmarked. And it's not even that I expected this not to live up, but just like, I'm not going to go in with the expectation that it's going to live up because I know myself, I know my 5 stars. And so I'm like, I'm going into this expecting that I'm going to love it, that I'm going to have a great time, but I don't need it to be on the pedestal of those two. And like, I was kind of cognizant of that the whole time. I was like, don't go in expecting or needing it to be a 5. You know how you are with 5s. Like, just go in for a good time and have a good time. And I was set for it. I was like, this is going to be a solid minimum 4-star book. It's going to be great. And then I felt like for a long time, I was kind of waiting for it to start. And then it did start. And then I was kind of waiting for it to move. And it wasn't really moving. And yeah, I think non-spoilery, it's just a lot of the things that I've said throughout this video. I mean, you kind of saw where my thought process was at with a lot of these things. And when I left off last night, I was like, okay, we hit this midpoint. Something is about to happen. Like, we're about to kind of like start moving on things. And I was really excited for that movement. And then even that movement didn't really do much. I don't know. I think the pacing of this was just not very good. This is the middle book syndrome of this series. I think Bloodmarked kind of lulled me into a false sense of security that we weren't going to have that middle book syndrome. But this very much feels like, why was I reading this? And was I just reading this to get to the next book? It is so long for kind of no reason. I genuinely don't think that there was a reason this needed to be nearly 650 pages. It's 90 pages longer than Bloodmarked, and so much less actually happens. I just feel like this was way too long for no reason. And I don't think, I mean, hard to know now what's going to happen, maybe 2 years down the line. But like, I don't feel like I'm going to feel a big need or want to reread this book. I reread Legendborn for Bloodmarked. I reread Bloodmarked for Oathbound. I don't want to reread Oathbound for the 4th book. This might be one that I just look up a synopsis or a summary for, or a recap for, because it wasn't a painful read, but there were definitely times where like it was kind of like pulling teeth to get through it, where I was like, why are we still doing this? Why are we still here? Why isn't, and again, like I mentioned in one of my earlier check-ins, it's hard to balance whether that feeling is something about the narrative itself, or like, is it that nothing is happening, or is it that the things that I wanted to happen and the things that I envisioned happening aren't happening, right? I think it's both. I think like I was a little bummed that the things that I wanted to happen weren't happening, but also for a lot of time, like there was just nothing happening for so much of it, and it's hard to say much without being spoilery, so I will not say much. But yeah, I think it's too long. The pacing of this isn't great. The multi-POV isn't handled particularly great. There's a bold move in this. I mean, as you know, at the end of Bloodmarked, you've separated the cast at the end of Bloodmarked, and that is a really, really bold move to make, and that can pay off really well, or it can be a mess. And I think separating the cast in the way that it was done and in the way that the narrative continues to do it in this was messy and not in a good way, not in a satisfactory way. I love this series so much. I love these books so much. I am still highly, highly looking forward to book 4. In my mind, this is that sort of mid-series slump. This is that middle book syndrome, which means that what comes after that is better, is exactly what you want. Again, I'm really still highly anticipating book 4. I still really want to see where we go from here. I have a lot of questions about the end of this book. I don't know that the ending of this was particularly satisfactory either. Anyway, more to come in a spoiler section, though it's not going to be a full review, a full rundown. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad. I am somebody who still uses the 5-star rating scale, though I do quarters and halves and whatever, and it's kind of all arbitrary anyway. But I think for me, this is like, I can call this a 3. I can call this a 3. A 3 for me covers a lot of sins. A 3 for me is a very wide range of thoughts. The friend that I'm reading this with, he thought I'm crazy for giving it a 3. He's at a solid 2.5. Given the books that I know that I have rated in the 2 range, this is not that bad. So I'm calling this a 3. I feel like it might be a little bit of a low 3, but maybe it's a mid 3. I don't know. It's a 3. Nobody's more surprised about that than I am. This was not how this reading vlog was supposed to go. This is not how this was supposed to go. This was supposed to be like my hype train for Oathmarked or Oathbound. But man, that was a mess. Okay, so this is your warning to get out if you haven't read this book. I'm going to talk a little bit about spoilery stuff. I'm not going to stick around in this too much. I'm just going to kind of be a little bit more, or a little bit less vague, a little bit more direct about some of the things that I thought about this book. So this is spoiler section. Get out. If you don't want spoilers for Oathmarked, Oathbound, yes. Oh my God, I keep messing up Oathbound, Oathmarked. This is the spoiler section. If you do not want spoilers, if you are avoiding anything about this book, if you don't want to know anything about the plot, get out. I can't stress enough that now is the time to leave. If you are still here, I am going to assume that you want spoilers and are ready for spoilers, okay? Okay. Again, I finished this book like an hour ago, so I don't have neat and collected thoughts. I just have a lot of what's kind of banging around up here. First and foremost, I cannot believe that we spent 230 pages at the auction house. Over a third of this entire book is spent at the auction house. I can't believe we spent 230 pages there. Every time we turned a chapter and we were still there, I was like, why are we still here? I cannot believe how long that section of the book was. It wasn't even a section of the book. That was an entire act of the book that we spend in that one location doing that one thing. Oh my God. And for what? Okay, I just had to get that out first. So when I talk about us taking one step forward, 2 steps back, I think that 2 steps back is Bree losing her memories. And what essentially amounts to an amnesia plotline. And an amnesia plotline can work really well, can be very intriguing, can be very interesting. I don't think it really did much of anything for the narrative here until the very end when you get a little bit of that closure. And even still, most of the time, I just felt like by losing her memories, I feel like we lost so much of the forward momentum in her character growth and the emotional arcs of this series. One of the things that I was really looking forward to in Bree's journey moving on from Bloodmarked was she had that really big blow up with Vera in a way that was not entirely warranted, but in which I understood. So she has the big blow up with Vera where she's like, you screwed us. You cursed this entire line. This thing that you've given us, this thing that you keep telling me it's a gift, you cursed us. And she has a huge blow up with Vera in that moment in a way that is pretty unwarranted for a woman who was in Vera's position. And Vera pushes back on that. She's like, look, you can't possibly understand what I was going through. I made the choice that I had to make at that time, the only choice that was available to me. And I couldn't have known. And we all, as the reader, know, and even Bree knows that she could not have known what the consequences of that choice were going to be. But I understood Bree having that reaction in that moment because I'm reading that as, okay, this is a teenage girl. She's still deep in the throes of grief over her mother. She's got this huge upheaval in her life. And so she's got all these things working against her to put her in this very, very volatile emotional state that leads her to then that blow up with Vera. And that's massive. And one of the things I was really looking forward to going forward is the sort of recognition, the sort of introspection in connecting with her ancestors. And we remember from Bloodmarked that she cuts herself off from them, but the introspection that we could see from Bree and that journey to realizing that she is valid in her feelings of anger, and she's valid in her feelings of like unfairness of her life. And yet none of that is like, Vera's not to blame for that. Like Vera did the best that she could in a horrific situation. And I think that there's such an opportunity to connect with her past and connect with her ancestors and connect with that whole storyline, that now that once we take her memories away and we cut her off from her root and we don't try to get it back at all, we've just stopped all of that. And not even entirely, because she still remembers people who are dead, so she still remembers them, but we really don't talk about that. There's like 2 sentences in Oathbound that talk about that, and they're kind of, one is certainly very off the cuff. It's the first time that she mentions Vera, and the first time that the narrative mentions Vera, Bree, it's her internal dialogue or her internal monologue, thinking about that, like, she shouldn't have blown up at Vera like that like she shouldn't, basically acknowledging that like that level of anger she showed toward Vera, and that she wants to do what Vera wants her to do. She recognizes what Vera needed and what Vera wanted her to do, and she wants to be that person. Like she still wants to be that like wound turned weapon. And like that's a very big change from the very last thing that we saw from her regarding Vera, which was that big blow up, that big conversation. And I wanted to see more introspection on that. And I think we even said that at the time. My friend and I were like, that's like a start. That's an interesting start. Like she's clearly had some idea and some growth, but we didn't really get to see that. And I still want to see that introspection. And we get that a little bit later in the book in that discussion with her and Zoe and Mariah. And we get a little bit of that conversation of like Bree recognizing like, I should not have blamed her. I should not have yelled at her like that. I really was not right of me to do that. And Zoe also validating like, hey, you're dealing with a lot right now. Like you are allowed to be angry about this. Like apologize to her if you want, but your anger and your grief is still valid. And so we kind of get a little bit of that introspection, but like, I really want closure with Vera, I think, in that way that, I don't know. I really, and we didn't get any of that. We really didn't get any of that. And like, I hope that we get that in the 4th book. And then like the emotional storyline with Sel and Nick, we also stopped, again, everything in its tracks. She forgot everybody who's living. So we really stopped all of that right in its tracks. And it took us a really long time to gain that back again. And we kind of do through that 230 pages that we spend in the auction house. We get some of that back with Nick, but we don't get the same level of that with everybody else. We get a lot of that back with Nick in the romantic storyline with the 2 of them. And eventually her realization that like, this might just be who I am now, and that has to be okay. Like we have to accept that, like, and I'm going to accept that this might just be my new normal, and I do have to learn all of you again. And like, this is still me, it's still Bree, I'm still who I am. And I think that's kind of the emotional climax of that arc with the 2 of them up on the roof. And they both come to that realization that like, they're accepting that this is who she is now, and like, this is her new, I think they call it like her new forever. And like, we're no longer waiting for you to become the person that you were previously. We're this person now with these this lack of memories and these new memories that we're making. And like, it took us so long to get there, and we really only got that with her and Nick, but like nobody else kind of gets that amount of screen time. First of all, this is like an aside on everything, but like justice for Alice the Forgotten. My God, there's like 2 points in this book where we have everybody like Hazel, Lucille, Mariah, Emil, Valak, everybody's in one place, and it's not Hazel's house. And I'm like, did they just leave Alice alone in a coma in that house? Like she's just laying in that house by herself in a coma. And I think that happens twice. And we like don't really think about like justice for Alice. Alice kind of got screwed. Alice got shafted in this. And especially at the end, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves. Yeah, I feel like Alice kind of got shafted in the same way. And then even like stuff like with her dad, her father is brought into the fold finally. And that could have been a really big moment. Like that's kind of been something that Bree was trying to avoid for a long time, was bringing her father into all this. And we get her father finally brought into the fold, and it happens almost entirely off page and is never addressed with her. And there's a lot of stuff with her dad, I think, that wasn't addressed. We don't address the fact that he now knows everything that's going on. All of that happens off page. We're led to believe that he spent the last 3 days traveling with Natasha, so clearly she has filled him in on everything. That all happens off page. And also that, like, she doesn't remember him. She doesn't know who he is. By that point in the narrative, like closer and closer to the end, I feel like we've stopped focusing on the fact that she doesn't have her memories, which on one hand makes sense because we've just had that big revelation with her and Nick that like this is her new normal, but we don't address at all with her father that she doesn't remember him, that she doesn't know who this man is. She logically understands this is my father. And I think to some extent she has the memories and just has to connect the person with the feelings maybe, but like her memory loss in that way is kind of a little wonky, a little wishy-washy sometimes. And then again, the first time that she sees Alice in the bedroom, she like has an emotional moment of seeing her best friend, and she's like, oh, I put my best friend in a coma, and she sees Alice in the bed, and it's like, oh my God, Alice. But I'm like, you don't know the person that's laying there. Like you don't know, you only know that that is somebody named Alice because somebody else told you. But we kind of at that point abandoned the idea that like she doesn't remember these people and she has no memories of these people. I don't know. That was a bit of a mess. That was also a bit of a mess. There's a lot of stuff in the book I think that like I was kind of just scratching my head at. A lot of stuff with the auction house similarly, where I was asking a lot of questions about oh my God, the communion thing. When you get to the communion part where Nick decides to take on the communion for both of them, that doesn't make any sense. Like it makes sense for Nick to have offered to do that. That's a very Nick thing to do, to be like, I'm going to take on this terrible thing for the both of us. But it makes no sense for Mikhail to have agreed to it, because it almost makes it, he's like, I'm going to do the communion for both of us so you can ask me 10 questions instead of asking both of us 5, which makes it seem like the point of the communion is the number of questions being asked. And it's not. The point of the communion is talking to each person. So I don't know why Nick taking on double the amount of questions somehow negates the need to also speak to Bree, because that would then also kind of confirm the fact that she is the one who beat the shit out of that guard. I don't know. That entire point of like Nick taking on the communion for the both of them didn't make any sense why that would have gone. You have that horrific moment when you realize that the last items being auctioned off are these girls who are essentially being sold. They are being sold as slaves, basically, as magic slaves. And nobody seems to care about that. And I think what that is supposed to point to is this idea that like, yeah, the elites, this upper society, this like niche upper society is full of horrifically awful people. But the fact that there is no reaction from anybody in that room about the fact that they are auctioning off human girls is bizarre, because on our side we can see that they're auctioning off magic and magic human girls, and Mikhail even states that that's what it is, that it's about the magic. But we've also been led to believe that these people don't believe in the magic, that it's part of a game. So on their end, he's just auctioning off people for the sake of it. And like, there's no address to that. Like, as far as we, the reader, are aware, most of the people in that room don't know that magic is real, right? Like we have that interaction with the other couple that they talk to at the table, and she like all the demon stuff, the magic stuff is very tongue in cheek. They don't actually believe it because it's not like magic isn't real. There's a very small handful of people to our knowledge that know that this is real, that can see that. Most of them can't. And there's like no indication that anybody thinks, I don't know, that was very strange. And again, I think it may have just been trying to say something about like how awful all of these people are, that they don't, bat an eye at this auctioning off people. But that was like very much out of left field, I feel like, for that like group of people. It was very strange. And I could kind of like pick and choose and nitpick a bunch of stuff where like, this didn't really make sense to me here, and this didn't really make sense to me here. And like, at the end of the day, it was just like, that kind of happened a lot. Where I was like, wait a minute, what does this mean then? I don't know. I think separating the cast was something that just didn't particularly work for me, or at least separating them for nearly the entire book. Usually in a fantasy, like a multi-POV fantasy, that moment where all these disparate storylines come together and you have all these characters on page together for the first time, that is one of my favorite things in a fantasy novel. And yet, when we got to the auction, I like wasn't really feeling all that much. Like it didn't, and maybe it's just because it was so drawn out, but like, I don't know, that didn't really do it for me there. Yeah. And the cell stuff, I feel like a lot of the Natasha chapters weren't entirely necessary, except as a way to say like, hey, Cell is still around and he's still over here, but we weren't really getting much out of those chapters. And writing them as audio logs from the very beginning didn't make a ton of sense to me, because I don't know that Tracy Deonn wrote audio logs in a way that made sense, because the idea there being that like you're reading a transcript of an audio log. So this is what she's saying into her recorder. And yet the way that it's written is not a way that people talk. Like there's points where she's talking about having a conversation with Erebus, and the way that she is relaying the things they said to each other, people don't tell a story like that. That's not how people talk. Like it's written like dialogue that you would read in a book, which makes a lot of sense. But like to the point where you'll have a line of dialogue that's then cut off and then like the other person interrupts, but that's not how somebody tells a story. So like the audio logs didn't make a ton of sense. I don't know. This was just messy. It was messy. I feel like, I mean, I could just keep going. I don't need to be that nitpicky about everything, but like, it was just so messy. And then the ending, I don't really, what was the point of the twins? They just bounced really quickly. You get Cell back in the mix in this like newly unhinged character form that he's in. There's just enough of the teasing of the throuple in this series. I will say I have not been, previous to this book, and still am, but like I have not been this invested in a ship in a book series, I think, since I was a teenager. It's got to be all three of them. Like, I'm so convinced there is no other option. There's no other option for that like love triangle to go. It's all three of them. And like Tracy keeps dropping hints over and over and over again. And she keeps like teasing, like there's like 3 or 4 times where she's clearly teasing it. And I'm like, ma'am, please, you're just teasing me at this point. But we're still getting those teases here at the end with Cell. But now we've got this whole new thing to worry about with him with like the lineage. Here's the thing. I feel like you only get like one really big, massive lineage reveal in a series. Like one and done. And that was finding out Bree's lineage, and you got the double whammy with Bree and Nick at the same time. We both got a massive lineage reveal from them that like their parentage was not, or their lineage was not what they thought it was. And you get like one of those. And now we're getting another one. We're like, oh, Cell's father, also not who you thought he was. He's also got a crazy lineage thing going on. So we had our lineage thing with these two. We got through that. And now we're going to do another subplot that's the same, where like, shocking lineage storyline. Like, okay, I guess we're doing that now. I realize that like, this is totally just me complaining. And like, it just sounds like I hated it. And I don't think I hated it. Like, it was boring. I'm not gonna lie. I think this book was kind of boring. I think it was pretty stagnant. I feel like there was a lot of stuff left on the cutting room floor that kind of shouldn't have been. There was a lot of stuff in the book that didn't need to be in there. There were like multiple instances of explaining things that we didn't need explained. I think the concept of a warlock was explained 3 times in this book. A concept that we already know from the first 2 books. I get explaining it once when like you mention a warlock and you're like, oh, a human who bargained for power with the broker. I think it was explained 3 times in this book. And by the second and third time, I was like, why are we still explaining this every time this word comes up on page? Like we know, we have been knowing this. We got it. Yeah, I think there was just a lot that like didn't need to be in here that wasn't here. A lot of the stuff was stretched out. A lot of stuff that I wish had been in here in some way wasn't. Justice for Alice, just forgotten Alice. I wish we'd gotten more about the root crafters that were being kidnapped. We kind of get a mention of them. I think that could have been a really great use of Mariah's page time, which then also ended up just being much in the auction house. But like, we didn't really get a ton about the root crafters that were kidnapped. We saw the one time we were able to attach that one character that Bree sees, and then she's able to connect that with the other girls when she hears that that's happening. But we don't actually, I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff, there are a lot of reactions, there are a lot of character reactions, there are a lot of things that I wish had been on page, but were just sort of implicitly off page. And then the things that were on page were just like not happen. Like there's just nothing happening. There was just a lot of not much happening. Like we would get to the end of a Bree chapter or like a Bree section, I'd be like, okay, but like, has anything changed since we started this chapter, or are we still in the same place with the same character development in the same place? Like, I don't know. I just think it was messy. I'm also like, again, I read the book like an hour ago. So like, I'm kind of on that. I'm not removed enough to be like, okay, here is like the very calm, like, here's what I liked about this and here's what I didn't like about this. And it sounds terrible to be like, what did you like? I don't know. But like, if I had to point out the things that I really liked about this, I mean, I really liked getting to see Will. I really liked Will's chapters, at least like getting in his head. I really enjoyed. I liked seeing a bit of Nick's planning. We got like one Nick POV, but like being able to kind of see him working the system and his plan, his own plans within plans. I liked getting to see that from Nick. I liked Valak. Like a lot of stuff that I like comes down to characters, and most of them come down to side characters. But yeah, other than that, like, I just think the plot and the progression and the stagnation, a lot of it was just kind of messy. Oh, I'm so bummed about it. Oh, okay. But I'm still excited for the next book. I still really love this series. It's not like I would be like, oh, the 3rd book wasn't good, so you don't need to read these. I still highly recommend this. I love the 1st book. I love the 2nd book. The 3rd book is a bit of a slog, but keep going, because the 4th book, man, I hope it's going to be fantastic. And it'll just be that mid-book slump. But yeah, this one was a mess. This was a mess. And we waited like 2.5 years for this. So I'm hoping we don't have such a long wait for the 4th book. But yeah, that's where I land with Oathbound. And I don't know. Yeah. I'm bummed. I don't know what else to say. I'm bummed about it. I'm bummed. I guess I'm gonna edit this. What if I just like edit this and then never do anything with it? I just never post it. I don't know. Anyway, this has been a thing. This has been a reading vlog, an attempted reading vlog. But yeah, okay. I guess that's that. I guess I will go now. Okay, bye.